Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. To the backstory, this all happened in an EU country I won't name. I did my apprenticeship in a mid to large size factory as a machine operator. After completing my apprenticeship, I worked in production for about a month. Then I got called into the office and they asked if I could do some holiday coverage. I said, yeah, why not? Better hours and cleaner work. I learned the systems pretty easily since I'd been manufacturing those parts for a year. When my coworker returned from vacation, they asked me to stay and join their team. I agreed, thinking it sounded good. So I started working in the sales and quality department. Now to the present time, 5 years later, our team grew from 5 workers to 15 due to restructuring, which really helped us out. My boss retired last fall. After New Year's, we got a new young boss around my age, 29, who was a major jerk and sexist. A few weeks before he arrived, we'd hired a new employee, a nice young woman named Emma, age 21, whom I'd trained. If you're new, you're bound to make some mistakes, which is totally fine in my opinion. So I came in last Tuesday to hear my new boss, let's call him Jake, screaming like a maniac at Emma. I asked her what happened, and she said she filled out the wrong form, which happens even to me. Jake noticed it and yelled at her. I'll paraphrase what he said. Jake: "You stupid little idiot! How dumb can you be to fill out the wrong form? I should fire you and make sure you never find work in this field again." Emma started crying at this point. Then Jake stormed into his office and slammed the door shut. I asked Emma if she was okay, but she was still sobbing. So I brought her a coffee and took her to our office grandma, Maria. Everyone loves her so much. I was pretty pissed at this point and told everyone what happened. After they learned what Jake did to Emma, 3 of my coworkers stormed into his office and quit after 25 years with the company. Jake told them they were worthless and overpaid. They relayed this to us, and a plan was formed. Everyone would quit except for me, for now. What Jake didn't know yet was that we had a huge customer audit happening in 3 weeks, which I was the only one certified to prepare for. If we failed this, it would cost us 15 to 20 million euros and the customer would pull the contract. So after Jake learned that the whole department quit except for me, he was even more pissed. Jake: "Hey, why the hell did everyone quit?" Me: "Maybe because you're an a-hole and a sexist pig." Jake: "What did you just say, you a-hole?" Me: "You know what I said? And do you remember the big audit in 3 weeks by customer X?" Jake: "Yeah, what about it?" Me: "You know that I'm the only one certified to prepare for it, right?" Jake: "Yeah, and?" Me: "I quit as well because I don't want to work for such an a-hole boss. See ya." And I walked right out to say goodbye to my other coworkers in the whole factory. The production VP, Tom, noticed and asked what happened, so I told him, and he was pissed. He called the CEO, whom I knew pretty well, and said, "Alex, the crap's hit the fan big time. Come down to the production floor now." The CEO asked if it was important, and Tom said, "If you want to pass the audit in 3 weeks, then move your ass down here now." So Alex came running down with the entire C-suite and asked what was so important. I spoke up and said our whole department quit today and won't come back until Jake gets removed and fired. They asked what happened, and we told them. They were mad and asked how they could fix it. I said fire him and hire someone better. Because I had the most training and qualifications, they asked if I'd take the job, which I gladly accepted. We headed to my new office with my old department and Alex in tow. Jake saw me and said arrogantly, "Decided to come back and beg for your job, you little R-word?" I replied, "Nah, just here to inspect my new office, 'cause you're fired by now." He laughed and said that I was under him and only the CEO could fire him. So Alex came around the corner and said to Jake, "Get the duck out of my company, you're fired, and I'll make sure every company knows what you did." Jake turned white as a sheet. After that, Alex called the police and reported Jake for trespassing. In the end, I got a 70K raise and a bonus option, which I declined and asked if we could split it among my coworkers. I said, "I don't need that much money. Can we share the 1 million euros worth of bonuses?" Alex agreed and everyone got their jobs back. We completed the audit without any fails. The customer was happy and so were we. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd end up in a legal battle with the mayor of my small town, but life has a way of throwing curveballs at you. This all started when I decided to build a bridge on my property to connect 2 parcels of land I owned on either side of a creek. I've lived in this town my whole life. My family's owned this land for generations. The creek running through it has always been a bit of an inconvenience, separating the usable parts of the property. I finally saved up enough money to build a simple wooden bridge across it. Nothing fancy, just functional. Before starting construction, I did my due diligence. I checked local ordinances, confirmed property lines, and even had a surveyor come out. Everything was in order. The land and creek were 100% on my property. I didn't need any special permits for a small private bridge. I was good to go, or so I thought. I had just started laying out materials when I heard the unmistakable voice of our town's mayor, Karen Johnson. She came marching onto my property like she owned the place. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded. I explained my bridge project. She immediately started shaking her head. "Absolutely not. You can't build here. This creek belongs to the city." I was dumbfounded. "Ma'am, I'm certain this is my property. I've checked everything." Karen wasn't having it. "I'm the mayor. I think I know what land belongs to the city. This creek is city property and you're not building anything here." I tried reasoning with her, showing her the property maps and survey results. She dismissed them all, insisting she knew better. When I stood my ground, she threatened to have me arrested for trespassing. On my own land. "Fine," I said. "I won't build the bridge, but I think you're mistaken about who owns this land." Karen smirked. "We'll see about that. Don't let me catch you trying to build anything here again." I was furious, but decided to play it cool. I had an idea. The next day, I called the city office and requested all public records related to the creek and surrounding property. I also hired a real estate lawyer to look into the situation. While waiting for the records and legal advice, I decided to have some fun with Karen's ridiculous claim. If she wanted to insist the creek was city property, I'd treat it that way. I called the Public Works Department. "Hi, I'm reporting a fallen tree blocking the creek on my property. Since this is city land, I assume you'll send someone to remove it?" The confused clerk said they didn't maintain private creeks. I feigned surprise. "But Mayor Karen assured me this was city property. She must have been mistaken then. Thanks for clarifying." Next, I called about repairing some erosion along the bank. Again, they said it wasn't their responsibility. I played dumb. Gosh, the mayor seemed so certain this was city land. How embarrassing for her to be wrong about that. I kept this up for days, calling about every little thing. Branches in the water, algae growth, even some litter that had washed up. Each time I made sure to mention how the mayor herself had claimed it was city property. Word started getting around. People were confused about why the mayor was apparently mistaken about city property lines. Karen caught wind of what I was doing and was livid. She showed up at my door, red-faced and seething. "I know what you're doing," she hissed. "Cut it out right now, or I'll have you arrested for harassment." I put on my most innocent face. "I'm just being a good citizen and reporting issues on what you claimed was city land. If that's not the case, maybe you should publicly clarify the situation." She stormed off without another word. A week later, my lawyer called with good news. He'd gone through all the records and confirmed without a doubt that the creek and surrounding land were entirely my property. The city had no claim to it whatsoever. Armed with this information, I decided to move forward with building my bridge. I hadn't even started when Karen showed up again, this time with a police officer in tow. "I warned you," she said smugly. "Officer, arrest this man for trespassing and illegally building on city property." I calmly handed the officer copies of my property deed, survey results, and my lawyer's findings. "Actually, officer, I think you'll find I'm well within my rights here. The mayor seems to be confused about property lines." The officer reviewed the documents and turned to Karen. "Ma'am, this appears to be private property. You have no authority to prevent construction here." Karen's face went from smug to shocked to furious in seconds. She started ranting about how she was the mayor and she knew the law better than anyone. The officer calmly suggested she leave my property before she was the one arrested for trespassing. As she stormed off, I couldn't resist calling after her. "Don't worry, I'll make sure the bridge meets all city codes. Wouldn't want to violate any regulations on my own private property." I thought that would be the end of it, but Karen wasn't done yet. At the next city council meeting, she tried to push through an emergency ordinance prohibiting any construction near waterways without special approval. Approval that would come from her office, of course. Luckily, I'd anticipated something like this. I attended the meeting, and during public comments, laid out the whole situation. I presented evidence of Karen's false claims about my property, her threats, and her attempts to abuse her power to stop a perfectly legal project. The other council members were shocked. One of them asked Karen directly if she had really tried to claim private property as city land. Her sputtering non-answer told them everything they needed to know. The The council not only rejected Karen's proposed ordinance, but also voted to launch an ethics investigation into her conduct. It turned out my situation wasn't the only time she'd overstepped her authority. Long story short, the investigation uncovered a pattern of Karen abusing her position for personal vendettas and to benefit her friends. 2 months later, she was forced to resign as mayor. The local paper ran a story about the bridge that brought down the mayor. As for me, I finally got to build my bridge. It's nothing fancy, but every time I walk across it, I can't help but smile thinking about how it led to justice being served. The new mayor even attended the grand opening when I finished the bridge. He jokingly suggested naming it the Karen Crossing as a reminder of what happens when officials abuse their power. I decided to go with something a little less inflammatory, but the story has become something of a local legend. These days, things are pretty quiet around here. My property value has gone up now that it's all easily accessible, and every so often I see Karen around town. She always scowls and looks the other way. I just smile and wave, thankful that in the end, the truth came out and the little guy won. It just goes to show, sometimes standing up for what's right, even if it's just a simple bridge, can lead to big changes. And hey, if you're ever in town, feel free to stop by. I know a great spot for skipping stones in a lovely little creek, on my property, of course. The next one is a petty revenge story. I was a supervisor for a call center in 2013. I had worked for this company for about 7 years before working my way up to supervisor. It was for what I thought was my dream job. Decent pay for the time, good hours, and what I thought would be a relaxed environment. My job mainly consisted of doing QA for the phone calls, doing takeovers for irate customers, and making sure the schedule was done weekly. I was supervising a team of about 15 people. Most of them were good, solid people. However, there was this one employee, let's call her T. T was at the time, 25-year-old female, with me at the time being a 30-year-old male. I made it a point to keep my personal life distant from my team members. However, I could tell T was having issues. Issues to the point where she was coming into work hungover every day, puking in trash cans hungover. I'll point out that if a person opted to leave early with no sick time, this was an occurrence. Me, feeling sorry for T and tired of seeing her throw up, would ask her if she wanted to leave. If I asked an employee this, it wouldn't go against them if they left. She opted plenty of times. I didn't want her to get in trouble with HR. Well, T started calling off. A lot. It got to the point where HR told me I had to write her up. I had no choice. So, I brought her up to my desk with the door open and a witness supervisor with me. I told her she was getting a write-up for her absences. She was mad, but accepted it, signed the write-up, and that was that, I thought. 2 days later, I got an IM from my boss asking me to come to her office. I get in there, and my manager and the head of HR was there. They tell me the VP of HR is on the phone as well. Apparently, T is fighting this write-up, saying I did it because she wouldn't sleep with me. WTF. I've never been in a room alone with this woman, let alone given her any indication I wanted to sleep with her. No, she was a train wreck whom I had a soft heart for and tried to cut her a little slack. I asked HR if they had any proof of this. Of course they didn't. I asked if I was in any sort of trouble. My manager hem and hawed until the VP spoke up and said without any actual proof, no, I wasn't in trouble, but advised me to keep clear of her. I advised them no problem, except I was her supervisor, so that might be a huge issue unless she's transferred to another team. HR told me they didn't have room for her anywhere else and to just do my job. Okay, then a little petty revenge, then no longer could T go home early if she was hungover. No quarter given, no help. Had she shown up to work and done her job, no problem. But, like I said, girl was a train wreck. She would burn herself. On top of no help from me, I also had to do QA on her calls. Well, enough examples started to show up with her slurring her words, and one call when she didn't mute herself and the sound of her dry heaving could be heard over the phone. Hell, there was one where she fell asleep. I had enough ammunition now for a final write-up. Now, I was smart enough to not attempt this alone. I reached out to my manager and HR to be present while I wrote her up. They had already seen my QA notes and the tracked attendance, so they were on board. She was called into a conference room with all three of us. I informed her this would be her final write-up due to all of these reasons. She at first tried to scream I had harassed her and this was a witch hunt. No dice. HR told her before, and again, there was zero evidence of this. She suddenly flipped out and started screaming and then threw a chair across the room. HR termed her on the spot. Security guards were called to escort her out. It was a large to-do. I left the room and went back to work after she was escorted out. It was a small victory, but victory nonetheless. The moral of the story, don't dump on those trying to help you out. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Many years ago, I worked in aged care as a personal care assistant, the lowest rung of nursing staff, basically responsible for all the physical labor, such as showering residents, residents, assisting them to go to the toilet, getting them in and out of bed, that sort of thing. I loved my job, I genuinely did, and for a while worked at an agency going from place to place before getting poached by a specific nursing home, which is where the malicious compliance takes place. I had been working there for about a month, doing 4 days a week, all afternoons 3, 10 p.m., and 2 of those afternoons were back-to-back Wednesday and Thursday, and this is where the other nurse comes into play. Every second Wednesday, without fail, she would call in about 20 minutes before her shift. The 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. overnight shift was due to begin, leaving no time to get agency staff in to take over. Now I could wait until they arrived, but by the time they got there, it would likely be after 12 and my trains home would not be running. So in the end, I took on a double shift, 3 p.m. to 7 a.m., leaving me tired mentally and physically trying to get home on a packed morning rush hour train, so not much fun, but given the other option was to leave my residence without proper care, and that would never ever happen. This meant that by the time I got home, it was around 9:30 a.m. and couldn't get immediately to sleep due to needing to eat, shower, and do the plethora of tasks needed to be done before going to bed for the day, meaning I wasn't able to get to sleep until around 12:30, and my train to work left at 13 o'clock. This was obviously untenable, and after trying to do a double, followed by a regular shift, sans sleep a few times, I realized I was becoming a danger to my residents, my fellow staff members, and myself, due to not being able to maintain concentration. In the end, I told my RN that on the Thursdays after a double, I would not be able to do my shift for fear of someone getting hurt, which would open the nursing home and myself to potential legal trouble, not to mention someone suffering because of my choices. So, this had been happening for about 6 months now when I get called up to the office of the owner, who promptly sat me down and berated me for taking every second Thursday off and not being a team player. I tried to explain why it was that I was taking those Thursdays off, but she would not listen, so in the end I walked out with a write-up and a threat of termination if this behavior continued. Fast forward to the next Wednesday when, as usual, the other nurse called in 20 minutes before shift start saying she couldn't make it, leaving us a nurse down for the night, so the only person on for that entire shift would be a registered nurse. And you can't lift or assist people with only one person without using a hoist, and even then, you are meant to have 2 people for safety reasons. The nurse in charge of afternoons rolled her eyes after the call and said, "Looks like you are doing another double-bearded guy," to which I replied, "I can't, and since staying until agency staff get here is not an option since I wouldn't be able to get home, I suggest you call the owner and see what she recommends, and if she needs me to stay I will, but only if she gives me the direction herself and then confirms it with you." After 10 minutes, the owner hadn't answered any attempts to call, and I said, "Sorry, I have to leave," and the RN for the night shift began to get angry, to which I responded, "I will get fired if I stay here and then need to take tomorrow off, or someone could get harmed if I stay and then work. Neither of these is a great outcome, so I have to go." Now, I knew they were never going to be able to get agency staff with such short notice, and that even by the slimmest of chances they could find someone, it would be several hours between registering the request and someone showing up. So I walked out the door and hung around the corner for half an hour, knowing I would get a call sooner rather than later, and that I needed to be close by in order to get back and ensure my residents got the care they needed overnight and had my idiot grin to wake up to in the morning, especially for the 3 people who loved early morning showers. The call came, I returned, and 2 nights later I got a call from the owner who authorized me to work doubles as needed and take the next day off for safety reasons. As far as I know, the nurse who did the late call-ins was still working there when I left a year later. In the end, my residents got the care they deserved and I got to get some sleep after working 15 hours straight. The next one is an entitled people's story. I want my mom to transfer the deeds of her house to me and put her in a home. This was the opening sentence to a phone call I recently had with a member of the public. To get to me, she has made it through multiple perplexed colleagues from across the charity and legal sectors, and it had been sent to me to fathom. Your basic hospital pass of your problem now before hiding. The young lady continues with the exclamation, "Young lady, I'm just too tired of looking after my mum. I need to live a life now, and I have been doing it for so long. She won't pay for anything or let me bring the fun home. I just can't do it anymore, so I think it's only right that she gives me the house and moves into a home. She has only like 15 years max until she dies OP. Caring can be difficult, especially when you are feeling the pressure. Let's see what support might be available to you." Young lady: "I don't want support. I just want her out of the house so I can get on with my life." OP: "Many people caring get to this stage in their caring journey. With the right support, things can get better. If the amount of care needed is more, then that is something you will need to discuss as a family. However, I can give you information on the process." Young lady: "But you can tell her to give me her house?" OP: "No. Young lady, but you're supposed to help me, OP. Unfortunately, I am prevented from actually advising on legal interpersonal monetary elements. I can only advise on benefits and grants. Side note, I was very much thinking fortunately at this point, young lady. What does that mean? OP, I can't be involved in a decision like that. I can give you all the information on how it works and, young lady, what is the point of talking to you then? You're useless. OP, I'm sorry I'm not able to do this. How about you tell me a little about what type of condition your mom has? Young lady, what do you mean? OP, what type of illness does your mom have? Young lady, she doesn't, OP. How old is she? Young lady, 47. Silence. Literally 20 seconds of silence. OP, please can you confirm that your mom doesn't have an illness like cancer or has a disability like dementia or maybe needs physical help like lifting or a wheelchair? Young lady, no, OP. Does your mom work? Young lady, yeah, she works down the bakery. How else does she cover the bills? OP, please excuse the intrusion, but can I ask how old you are? Young lady, 22. OP, and do you get any extra help? Young lady, I get ISA and UC and the like. OP, incredibly confused. Don't you think your mum will mind being made to move out of her home? Young lady, she's getting old. She will be so much happier with my gran. OP, I need to advise you that what you are purposing isn't legal. Young lady, it will be fine. I'm sure my mum won't mind. OP, I really can't advise you any further. Maybe I should speak to your mum. Young lady, no, I will try someone else. And the call ended. No goodbyes or tantrums. Just a matter of fact, you aren't giving me it so someone else will. The experience put away as one of the weirder phone interactions I have had. Something that could have come straight out of Shameless. I often wondered what happened to the entitled young lady and her poor mum. I now have an answer to this as it came through the grapevine recently. I literally cannot say where, as it would reveal certain people in the same way this has been anonymized, so the characters can't be identified either. Thank you to my rather bemused colleague who helped me get this signed off as anonymous enough. The young lady got some more lawyer to create papers for her mum to sign over the rights. The mum, unsurprisingly horrified, said no, and the young lady threatened her with a knife. Fortunately, authorities were called, and the young lady is now serving 3 to 5 years for a variety of crimes, including extortion. Honestly, had this been written by Euripides, there would probably be another complex named after a Greek poet. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.